The journey through life rarely follows a straight path. At times, unexpected events can shake us to our core, pushing us to confront difficult decisions that challenge our values, our desires, and even our sense of self. For a young woman like you, a pregnancy, something you had hoped never to experience, has brought you to one of these pivotal crossroads. The weight of this situation is compounded by your boyfriend's unexpected and unusual request, one that has left you feeling trapped between his desires and your own profound fears. You've been with your boyfriend for 4 years, with a friendship that began a few years before that. From the start, you admired his charm, his kindness, and the bond you shared. But there was always an edge to his personality, a part of him that revealed a more complicated side. Early in your friendship, he had a relationship with a friend with benefits, FWB, and that relationship unexpectedly led to her pregnancy. Your boyfriend made it clear that he had no interest in becoming a father, offering support for an abortion. But when she chose to keep the baby, he reluctantly agreed to pay child support, though he made it clear he wouldn't be involved in raising the child. Despite their differing choices, he continued to be physically involved with her, even after she gave birth. One night, when you were all a bit tipsy at a party, he casually mentioned that he had tasted her breast milk. At the time, you all laughed it off, treating it as a joke among friends. But later, he confided that this was more than just a passing curiosity. It was a secret desire that he found deeply pleasurable. When the two of you started dating officially, he confessed that he had a kink related to this experience, something that he found arousing and deeply personal. Over time, he'd grown comfortable with discussing it, and you did your best to accept this side of him, even though it didn't align with your own interests. Your relationship settled into a rhythm, one that seemed comfortable and fulfilling. Though your boyfriend's interests weren't always what you'd consider typical, you loved him, and he made you feel loved in return. When you moved in together 2 years ago, you found him watching videos related to his kink, and he sheepishly admitted that it was a part of his private life. Although it was outside of your comfort zone, you tried to accommodate it in small ways during your intimacy, hoping that your willingness would deepen your connection and show your acceptance of his unique desires. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. About a month ago, you noticed that you felt nauseous and dizzy more often than usual. You brushed it off at first, blaming stress and your recent habit of drinking a bit too much to cope with your struggles. However, when your boyfriend commented that your breasts seemed larger, a nagging fear crept into your mind. You bought a pregnancy test, praying that it wouldn't confirm your worst suspicions. Yet, there it was, a positive result. In that moment, it felt like your world was crumbling. You'd always considered yourself child-free. The thought of motherhood, of carrying a child, felt alien and terrifying. When you went to the doctor, the news got worse. You were already 14 weeks along, much further than you'd imagined. How could you have missed the signs for so long? You booked an appointment to begin the process for an abortion, but the timing meant that your options were rapidly narrowing. The reality of the situation hit hard. You felt suffocated, overwhelmed by the enormity of it all. When you got home, your boyfriend offered you some wine to calm your nerves, and in your vulnerable state, you drank, letting the alcohol blur the edges of your fear and despair. But then, he made an offhand comment that turned your blood cold. He joked about seeing if you could lactate before you had the abortion. You stared at him, stunned, trying to grasp what he was suggesting. He clarified that he wanted to delay the procedure to see if your body might produce milk, a prospect that excited him given his particular kink. The request felt like a punch to the gut. While you had always known about his unique desires, It had never crossed your mind that they would intersect with something so deeply personal and painful for you. You reminded him of your plans for an abortion, but he pleaded with you to delay it, suggesting that it would be a one-time opportunity, given that neither of you wanted children. He assured you that everything would work out and that you'd still be able to go through with the abortion in time. Despite your better judgment, his words chipped away at your resolve, especially since he had been so supportive and caring in other ways since the pregnancy news. You found yourself agreeing to wait, hoping that the extra time wouldn't make things worse. But as the days passed, the reality of your decision weighed on you more heavily. You were now 16 weeks pregnant, edging closer to the legal cutoff for abortion where you live. You couldn't shake the fear that if you delayed much longer, you might cross a point of no return. The thought of being forced into carrying the pregnancy to term filled you with a dread so intense that it made it hard to breathe. Your boyfriend continued to assure you that everything would be okay, but the creeping anxiety gnawed at your insides. Deep down, you knew that he couldn't fully understand what you were going through: the physical changes, the emotional turmoil, the sheer terror of facing a future you never wanted. You felt like you were living in a fog, a haze of confusion, where nothing made sense anymore. You missed classes at university, unable to concentrate on anything other than the ticking clock inside your mind. The walls of your shared apartment began to feel like a prison, with no escape from the thoughts that plagued you day and night. You tried to drown out the fear with alcohol and weed, numbing yourself to the present. Yet, every time you sobered up, reality came crashing back. You knew you needed to make a decision, but the idea of disappointing your boyfriend tore at your heart. You still loved him, this man who had been your friend, your partner, your support through so many ups and downs. And he seemed genuinely excited about the idea of exploring this kink with you in a way that he had never been before. Part of you wanted to hold on to that connection, to avoid being the source of his disappointment. Yet, another part of you knew that you couldn't keep sacrificing your own well-being for his desires. You couldn't ignore the anxiety that gripped you every time you thought about the pregnancy, the panic that woke you in the middle of the night, leaving you gasping for air. You feared that if you waited too long, you'd lose control over your own body and future, trapped by a decision that you had only made out of love for someone else. After weeks of struggling with your emotions, you finally found the courage to tell him how you truly felt. You called your mom beforehand, hoping for a safety net if things went badly. Even though your relationship with her had always been complicated, you needed someone in your corner. But her reaction was harsh, leaving you feeling more isolated than ever. She called you names, making it clear that she couldn't support your choices, especially after hearing about your boyfriend's request. Her words cut deep, adding another layer of pain to an already raw wound. The next day, you sat down with your boyfriend, trembling as you tried to find the words. Through tears, you explained how much this pregnancy had been tormenting you, how you couldn't handle the physical and emotional pain anymore. You told him that you needed to proceed with the abortion, that you couldn't keep delaying it just for his desires. You shared that you had been feeling disgusted by the changes in your body, by the idea of being pregnant, and that you had reached your breaking point. To your surprise, he listened quietly, his expressions softening as he saw the depth of your distress. He held you close as you cried, apologizing for not realizing how much you were suffering. He admitted that he had thought you were okay with waiting since you hadn't voiced your concerns before. His remorse seemed genuine, and for a moment, you felt a flicker of relief. He promised that he would support you through the abortion, offering to come with you to the clinic and stay by your side during the process. The days that followed were a mixture of emotional exhaustion and tentative hope. He continued to be attentive, cooking for you, giving you massages to help with your back pain, and even suggesting a small getaway after everything was over. He mentioned the possibility of attending a Taylor Swift concert together, a lifelong dream of yours, as a way to make up for the distress you'd both been through. His gestures were kind, and they reminded you of the man you fell in love with, the one who had been there through thick and thin, who made you laugh and feel cherished. Yet, despite the comfort of his presence, you knew that this ordeal had changed something fundamental between you. You still had questions about whether you could move past this, whether your relationship could truly recover from the pain it had caused you. And though your boyfriend's remorse felt real, you couldn't ignore the lingering doubts about how he had handled the situation. Was his excitement for the pregnancy purely about his desires, or did he truly care about your well-being too? With the abortion now scheduled, you took a deep breath, ready to reclaim your sense of control and autonomy.